And the United States Attorney's Office wanted as much evidence as they could get, and that was my job as an undercover to get the evidence. And I went into the clubhouse the night before the deal, and I was wired to the hilt, and that's when they took me down into the crawl space basement. It wasn't big, in the clubhouse, and stripped me at gunpoint. I was pretty wired. Yeah. When they bring me down there, man, you can see I'm having a panic moment. I'm having oh crap moment. Oh yeah, and it's the same. Everybody's body goes through the same thing. Adrenaline dump. Oh yeah. You get auditory exclusion. Everything sounds like you're underwater. It slows down. Everything slows down. You're like whoosh. Wow. Whoosh. So if I hear you, you're going, Scott. Wow. Right down because you're like, oh my goodness. And then your eyes, you get time dilation. Everything's in like screenshots. It's like click, click, click. You can feel your heart beating through your whole body. My hamstrings get rubbery, but you can clearly hear my voice is higher than this because of panic. My throat's tightening up. My diction gets pretty sloppy because I'm like, should I ask what's going on? Because I'm freaking out. Because I know I'm wired. I know that they've got pistols. They've already shown me that. I know I've seen rope. I know I'm not free to leave. I know even if I battled those guys, didn't get shot, and let's just say I made it past those two dudes. Right. Once I go up the steps, it's the clubhouse. They just finished what they call church, which is their weekly meeting. Yes. And it's probably another 10 outlaws in there. Jeez. And the door's heavily fortified. It's locked with a steel bar across the door. Wow. So, I mean, what are you going to do? Yeah. And then I think I'm done. And he searches me. I'm completely naked. Well, I'm naked from the ankles up. Yeah, I take off all my clothes, my boots. Yeah. I drop my pants and underwear down around my ankles. They check me. And then I get my pants back up. I might have got my boots on. And that's when Clothesline says, he picks up a piece of clothing. And that piece of clothing actually had a recording device in it. Oh my goodness. And he says, hey, I'm not going to find anything in here. And he starts kneading the jacket. He starts he's grabbing it, and he's kneading it with his fingers, and he's going up it. And I'm like, I'm watching it, and I go, I don't even know how to do it, but I'm watching it, and you hear me go,
Welcome to the Embracing Brokenness podcast, where our goal is to engage with all of those willing to venture deeper into their transformational journey with Christ. Here's your host and co-founder of Embracing Brokenness Ministries, Steve Adams.
Well, hi, folks. Welcome to the Embracing Brokenness podcast. I am so glad that you tuned in today, especially today. And if you're new to this, man, you're jumping into something pretty cool, because I invited Scott Payne to join us. Scott is a former undercover FBI agent, and he got himself into some pretty gnarly situations by choice. But the most interesting parts of his story are, how he integrated his life as a Christ follower to his professional life, which called him to go into places and even act the part of anyone but someone you would label as a Christ follower. Now, if you take a look at Scott, you can see the profile that he found himself into a lot of times. Loves to ride motorcycles, loves to hang out in situations where, if you look again, you'll see this kind of persona that provides the perfect undercover backdrop for exposing some of the bad guys that he talks about in our podcast today. Really, really cool stuff. But again, we're going to do this in two parts, because we have a couple hours worth of content, and this is not a long form podcast. So we're going to break it out at a logical place. We'll stop. And then the next time around, even toward the end of that conversation, I invited Colleen to come in and ask Scott a few questions. If you aren't watching by video, you might want to tune in. I do have a smile on my face. It's for a reason. Every once in a while, when I get to do this, I find myself in a really unique position to speak to someone who, as a guest, has a really amazing God story. And that is not the exception today either. We're doing that. We are going to introduce you to someone who I've gotten to know a little bit here over the last few weeks. And I have a feeling if we were neighbors, I'd be really good friends with Scott Payne. So I'm going to hold up something that is now Here you go, guys. It's called Codename Pale Horse: How I Went
Yes, sir.
Undercover to Expose America's Nazis. It's on the New York Times bestseller list. I happen to listen to it on Audible because when you meet Scott, you'll understand why, because probably one of the best storytellers I've met in a while. So listen, without further ado, Scott, thanks, buddy. Thank you for joining me. This is amazing. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me on here, buddy.
Absolutely. So that was quite the intro, right? 28 years, right, in law enforcement, undercover FBI, and you have a lot of initials and titles after your name right now. So yeah, you're right. So man, tell us what all of those things, if of all the things that you found yourself doing, all right, which one was the most challenging for you?
That's good, because I mean, I guess on all levels, because I wanted to be well-rounded, and I love doing more than one thing. I'm a workaholic. I mean, I get it honestly from my parents and stuff, but I wanted to do everything. So being a case agent in the FBI, being a proactive investigator, going out and developing sources of information, running big cases, putting a lot of people who have committed crimes in jail, that can be very taxing, especially if you're a worker, you know, like me and my peers. We had this one squad I was on in Tennessee, and I mean, the average was very high because everybody was a big hitter. So you just working. So those can be hard. Being on SWAT, I mean, the training isn't easy, and then you're going and hitting all these houses and doing arrests, and down on the border, when I was down there in McAllen, I mean, we were hitting stuff all the time, and it's very dangerous. Sure. And then you can be on the range teaching firearms and tactics, and you could, if you're not on, dotting your I's and crossing your T's, it could be dangerous. You got to watch, because not everybody's an awesome high equivalent weapon handler and stuff like that. But and then you get the undercover. I mean, I which is what the book's mainly about. And that, the title, I love the title. The subtitle, I argued about it, because I'm like, for me, if you say How I Infiltrated America's Nazis, that makes it sound like the whole book is about me going into a white supremacy group. I argued. I'm like, man, I said biker stuff is coming back. It's coming back mainstream on TV. I'm like, there's 4 chapters of like me and the Outlaws. There's murder for hire cases. There's public corruption cases. There's all kinds of stuff. And but the big wigs that are literary gurus at the top of Simon and Schuster and Atria books, they were like, nah. And I'd argue. I'd wait about 2 or 3 months, and I'd be like, hey, I'm going to circle back on this. Because originally the Rolling Stone magazine article, which we didn't choose the title, me and the journalist, he called me one night. He goes, I'm so sorry, Scott, they changed the name. And because we were calling it like the Infiltrator or something like that. And I said, he goes, it's terrible. And I go, well, what'd they change it to? He said, the Undercover Nazi. And I said, that is terrible. I go, it makes it sound like I'm a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi. And he was like, I'm so sorry. He's a Jewish guy. He's like, I'm so sorry, Scott. He was dropping some flavorful words. I might have responded back with a couple of colorful ones myself. But then it hit me, because he was just saying it was a Saturday night. And I'm like, wait a minute. I said, Paul, like, a Rolling Stone magazine is a worldwide magazine. This has got to be close to $1 billion company, if not more. They're printing magazines in foreign languages all over the world. I said, there's no way they don't have people looking at algorithms and hot button words. And they were right. Because when that article came out, just the title, Undercover Nazi, with my picture, it was on top of like Apple News for, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months. But that's why I made the argument, and I'm like, well, they said, look, if you look at the book jacket, it'll have, and I'm like, okay, well, but we're a New York Times bestseller now. So, but they told me I had to change my title. Now, since I retired, I've never made a business card, because I didn't know what to put on it, because I don't have an LLC. What I'll put, like Scott Payne, the speaker. I mean, what do you want me to do? But now I got an idea. New York Times best-selling author. So, which is crazy.
So New York Times bestseller, though, is a pretty good title, but it's probably not your best achievement. I'm going to say that right now, because someone that, as I know a little bit of your backstory in the sense of, as a Christ follower, right, you put yourself in some pretty precarious situations, but at the same time, you were called to do it. That's not an easy task, an easy calling. In fact, it's interesting. So I noticed this on the back by Linwood Barclay. He said something really interesting here. He's a best-selling author himself. Said, I raced through it. Payne lifts up the rock to show what's underneath. You can't look away.
Yeah.
And so I think, okay, it's a bit of a train wreck when you start looking at it.
Yeah, there's a lot of shock and awe.
Oh my God.
But
so as somebody, a skinny white dude, that grew up in the suburbs around Philly, like you get a little bit of that exposure. Now I grew up in the, my high school years were the 70s. Yours were more like the 80s, right?
80s, yeah.
Yeah.
80s kid.
Yeah, 80s kid. Well, my wife, when you get to talk to her later, I mean, man, she had the big hair, like the whole thing, right? So, and
it's coming back.
Yeah, it is.
It's coming
back.
It
is. You with your.
I'll see my daughter walk in with clothes on, and I'm going, that is totally 80s.
So,
And now 70s, I see it's not just boot cut, it's the bell bottoms coming back. Yeah. And I'm like, cool.
Guess what? I sold mine and they're staying out there somewhere. I'm not bringing them back. But, it's fascinating because we were in the middle of like race wars and stuff. Like in my high school, there were police and dogs, and you were younger, but you may remember people were just going at it like this. And so I know the tension that exists in the world, but a lot of that went underground, and you got into some really interesting spaces. But before we explore that, like take us back. What was childhood like for you? Because this could have been, maybe a setup, right? Somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a Christian home. My parents, I mean, we went to church every Sunday. But I was raised Southern Baptist. I kid now because it was more of the doom and gloom,
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if that's your bag, that's cool. The book is the book, right? Yeah, I remember when I went to Christian school.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. You're not worthy.
Man.
You can't do this, can't do that, and that's the one you find at the bar with a hooker, and you're like,
exactly.
Yeah, and again, when you're on the front line, that's when those evil attacks are coming.
Yeah, they are.
And you better be ready. Because like you look at somebody like a Jimmy Swaggart, they started passionate.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the lines, it'll get you.
Sideways.
And it's probably got to do with ego as well.
It does. It does.
A very good buddy, mentor, even great instructor. He says he coined it. Your amigo. Oh, and I'm sorry. Your ego is not your amigo. That's what he says.
I like that.
Yeah. And he's Mexican. So he's like,
he gets away with it.
He's like, your ego is not your amigo. And I'm like, all right, I got it. But yeah, I went to Christian school for the first 7 years, first through seventh grade. And I remember when I got baptized as an adult in McAllen, Texas, they ask you that if you go in there to get baptized, they're like, have you ever been saved? I'm like, yeah. And they go, well, when was it? And I said, which time? And they're like, what do you mean, which time? I go, man, every week, I think they would bring in a different pastor. And I guess it was Wednesdays you had it. But as a kid, it was all guilt, hellfire, and brimstone. I walked to the altar on every pastor. I mean, I felt guilty. I got saved every pastor that came.
We called that rededicating our life.
Every week.
Every week.
Yeah, even as a chunky kid, I'm like, I ate that Snickers. I shouldn't have ate it. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I felt so guilty. They'd like, now you come on down here if you got something to get off your chest. And I'll be walking down there.
Oh my gosh. Okay, people see why I have a smile on my face. I do this.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know, man. I'm like, this first through seventh grade, I got saved a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
I wrote on the board, the devil made me do it probably 100 times in chalk.
You were one of those guys.
Yeah. I think the max was like 45 demerits, and I think I was at like 40. I'm like, I don't know. Who knew? You know,
No, we didn't
who
know.
knew?
And then we grew up and the world changed in a hurry. Oh man.
Yeah, the Lord was preparing me the whole time.
Oh.
So when I went to 8th grade, I had some serious peer pressure problems, and and like you were talking about the racial divide, it was still there in the 8th grade for me. I mean, I got jumped. I wasn't scared. I got some guy challenged me. We were going to get in a fight, and I got jumped by eight black guys in the bathroom. I thought I was fighting one, and that was my first lesson in life, that fights aren't fair.
Oh no, they aren't. You weren't 6'4", 240 then, or 50, were you?
No. Yeah, it was. And you're young, you don't know what you're doing. But anyway, it could have ended bad, but it didn't. But those real things, I can circle back on it later, but those are real things I used when I'm undercover. Sure. Like, you're in a white supremacy group, violent. They want to know, what was your red pill moment? When did you radicalize? And I'm like, man, I was jumped by 8 guys. I tell the true stuff, to kind of, you're not really, it's not hard to sell if it's true.
No, it isn't. That's why you went by your first name, Scott. That made it a little easier, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's a common name. Sure. If my name was something like, I don't know, Glennis or something like that, I'd probably change my name.
Sure.
But so I mean, I grew up good family, and then as I detail in chapter 1, right, the first chapter.
I think so.
The first chapter is just kind of like a synopsis of me growing up and high school and stuff. But I talk about diving into witchcraft and devil worshiping, Satan worshiping, whatever you want to call it, in the 80s. And I was just in a dark place. Yeah. But as I grew up, I look back on it and I'm like, oh, I see what was happening psychologically.
Sure.
My parents got divorced, and that, I don't care, hey, are you okay with this? Are you sure you're okay? I don't care. But that I don't care went into everything I did. And I was doing some evil stuff, man. I was a punk is what I was. I would like to smack myself. You know what I mean?
Well,
I'd like to go back and punch me right in the face. You know? But in the name of Jesus, of course.
Of course.
Makes it right when you finish.
Exactly. You feel
in the name of Jesus. I whipped you.
Uh-huh.
But I had a lot of people praying for me, and I didn't realize it. And I had Jesus scared back into me one night, doing the messing around with the demon stuff, and I acted like I'd watched every horror movie and satanic movie from A to Z back when you could go rent movies at a store. Right. I started at A and went all the way to Z and watched them all, and I was watching like demonic possession stuff, and I'd started doing like this kind of like a Freddy Krueger, but even kind of a weirder voice. And just kind of acting out little skits. And one night I'd been doing it. I mean, I'd made people cry. I was losing my friends. I had a terrible attitude. And one night we'd been drinking, nothing psychedelic, nothing, just some drinking. And I was in a room with my friend, and he was with his girlfriend, but we were just passing out. I didn't drive to that house party, and we were just crashing there. And I was pretending. I was reenacting a scene from a movie I'd saw. Don't even know the name. Don't even want to know the name anymore. Sure. But it was a demonic possession. So I act like I was fighting the demon, and the demon was fighting me. And in the end, the demon wins, and you laugh like the demon because the demon has taken over your soul. And I was facing the back of a couch. So I'm laying there facing the back of the couch, and as I laugh like the demon, I roll over, and what I saw was a kind of a watery image, but it was all red. And I clearly saw like a demon looking at me with his crooked finger and fingernail and looking at me smiling, saying, "Come here," like that. And I screamed. I mean, just for me to sit up off the couch and the light switch is right there. That far, I was dripping with sweat and was white as a sheet. Like and my buddy jumped up out of bed, and he's like, he jumps up out of bed because he's like, "What the?" He's like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" Because I was screaming. Oh. And I looked at him and I said, "Hey," as I'm catching my breath, I said, "If I ever do that again, if you ever hear me talk like that or anything, you got my permission to take a bat and crack me over the skull with it." I mean, that's, and the room got real calm, and it's like he knew. But for me, it was a very spiritual moment because he was, because it went from like, you got to realize, screaming, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" to, and he looks right at me and leans in and he said, "I told you, didn't I?" Oh man. As if it was the spirit talking. And I was like, "Yep, And that was it. I didn't sleep that night. I walked to church. I walked to Edwards Road Baptist Church in Greenville, South Carolina. I sat through every service. That was it. I was done with Satan after that. I'm like, that's it. I'm done.
Well, that sounded like something out of the scene of The Exorcist or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was messing around with all kinds of stuff, reading different things, and I mean, it started like a lot of things start. Just messing around with a Ouija board.
Oh, well,
yeah. Well, I know. Yeah, but you're young and you're stupid.
Yeah, I think I had.
You're inviting bad things to happen.
I think I pulled out, what was it that was like the 8-ball? Remember that thing or whatever that thing was that you spin around and it gives you, and I'm like, you could feel the presence. So, cause I made a decision to follow the Lord early in life. I was probably 9 years old, but I grew up in a home where my folks were really committed. I mean, they got married. It's like a third marriage from my dad, a second from my mom. They got saved right when I was born. So, man, thank you, Lord, because I was taught a different way, and it just felt like demonic. Like when you get into something like that, like you
especially when you're young.
Well,
young, so youth pick up on evil a lot more.
Yeah, I think
because they're less well, maybe not today because they're getting desensitized at such an early age with the gaming and all that stuff. But generally speaking, because the kid hasn't been desensitized to that kind of evil. Yeah. Whereas an adult will just kind of like, oh, that's just normal kind of, but they can pick up on it more. I mean, I could when I was a kid.
Well, sure.
There was a painting we had in our house. It was like a conquistador, but it was like that Ghostbusters 2 thing. Like everywhere you went, the eyeballs, like no matter if I went to this side or that side, they were looking at you.
I saw some Jesus paintings like that, by the way.
Well, that would have been better. Yeah, I wouldn't have been scared of Jesus.
Yeah, but, he's looking at you and like, yeah, and then, that's one of those things you put up in a fundamental church. And you go, see, keep your eye on.
Yeah, I know, right?
He sees everything you're doing.
But yeah, I remember being I would go down the hall, and when it was at the doorway where that picture was at painting, I'd jump. I'd like there was a bad guy going to grab me at my ankles or something.
Part of your training for Undercover later.
Yeah. Yeah, get out.
Man,
get out.
So it's so obviously, you're in a little different space now since you've matured a bit, but you grew up. I feel like there's a story you've told about. I think it was your principal in your school. You don't have to get to the entire details of it, but you certainly were. You were sent on your first undercover mission at a young age. I'm sure by that you were you started to go, okay, maybe this is something that I should be doing, right?
I didn't realize it then. It's just that, I mean, if somebody would have asked me, can I go to all groups in the 80s? Yeah. I mean, I could. Yeah. My high school was broken up into all kinds of things. I could hang out with the jocks. I was a jock. Right. I could hang out with the musicians. I'm a musician and a singer. Right. I could hang out in the weight room with the meatheads, still a meathead. Hang out with the smart people, go to the potheads, could hang out with them. Yep. And then in the 80s, we had a smoking area in high school.
I remember that.
I remember that. Yeah, right. So I could go out there and hang with them.
I forgot about that till you just said it. Like, are you kidding? Wow.
I know, like 16-year-old kids out back.
Yeah, smoking. Whatever.
Yeah. Trying to look cool. Yeah. Trying to get the cool help.
And rolling their own.
You don't want to do that. You want to be like James Dean kind of.
Yeah, you can't hold it like a woman. No.
No. That's all. Y'all had to. There was a whole shtick that went with it.
Yeah, there was.
And then you turn like 3 shades of green because you're about to puke. Because you accidentally inhaled the first time.
Right, you're right.
You're like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. But yeah, so I had the first 2 years of high school. It was the vice principal, Lloyd Walker. He was a short black guy, balding, always had his 3-piece suit on, I did not think he liked me at all my first 2 years. And I'm sure it was for great reason,
Yeah, right.
But I'm like, why is this guy always on my tail? And then my junior year in high school, I was in a rock band and I was the singer, and we did the talent show at school. And
I remember those.
I was not experienced in playing in front of families who were there to see their kids do like violin acts or a karate move or dance. It was a rock band, and all I'd been playing was keg parties.
Wow.
So
Wow.
sometimes when you're singing Pretty Woman or Hot for Teacher, if you grab your crotch, it got a pop.
Oops.
And who knew?
Yeah.
So the long and short of it is we played the song Hot for Teacher, and apparently I grabbed my crotch a lot because of my nervousness, being immature, not having experience on stage. And they closed the curtain on us. It was like a comedy scene, like they're trying to cut the power and the curtain's closing while we're singing Hot for Teacher by Van Halen.
Got the hook.
Yeah, very, very, very Gong Show or Showtime at the Apollo.
Exactly.
Yeah, come out sweeping me off the stage.
Yeah.
But then the principal, Miss Workman, she wanted to expel me. She came up and she's like, "Did you blah 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 blah?" And my mother's a rocker, man. She's like, my mom was standing there, and you don't mess with a mama's boy, And she's like, "Is this your son? Are you his mother?" And she's like, "Yeah." She goes, "Did you see what he did on stage?" And my mom was like, "Yeah, it was awesome." So I think that was like a Friday night, maybe like Monday. I get called into Mr. Walker's office, and I'm like, "Oh man, I know I'm in trouble." And I went in there, and I'm like, I went in protesting right away. I'm like, "I don't care what they said. I didn't blah blah blah." They had recorded it, so he throws in the tape. And I'm watching it with him, and I'm like, it's not, I didn't just grab it when I said Hot for Teacher. I was like grabbing it. I was nervous. I was grabbing it through the whole song. Ouch. And then, and I just started laughing. I was like, I don't have a rebuttal. I didn't have that word in my vocabulary when I was that young, but I was like, I don't have a response, basically. No comeback. And we both started laughing because I was like, man, I mean, like Michael Jackson, he grabs his stuff all the time,
Sure.
And we started laughing, and I don't know, I guess that's what broke the mold. He liked me after that. And and I put it I talk in detail about it in the book, but his house got tagged. It didn't just get rolled with toilet paper. I mean, they keyed his car, they spray painted the house, I think he had a BMW too. It's a nice vehicle.
It's nice for a principal. Nice car for a principal.
Yeah. And he, it had some racial slurs and stuff. And he called me into his office, and he's like, "Man, did you hear about what happened?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean, I drove past your house. It was not far from where I lived." And he goes, "Man, I've watched you. I see that you can, maybe, I don't like to say blend in, but just be accepted. Like I can connect. Like I'm not pretending to be somebody different. I'm me, but I can get along with all kinds of people and groups." And that's what he saw. And he asked me if I would try to help him find out who did it. And I did. So, but looking back, like you're doing the book and people are like, "What was your first undercover experience?"
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that's perfect.
I start thinking, and I'm like, well, I mean, I wasn't pretending to be Scott with a different last name, but technically I was covertly working my way through groups trying to figure out who did this to Mr. Walker's house and car.
Your first case, you didn't get paid for it, but you probably didn't get a paddle either, right? So
no, I got rewarded. He said I stopped getting in school suspension.
Oh, nice.
And licks. Yeah. I'll tell you what I told you, 8th grade, the transition was a bad transition because I had not had the kind of peer pressure. And I failed at it miserably. Yeah. But I bet you my 8th grade year, I bet you if you looked at how many licks I got for the year, we probably averaged close to a lick a day.
Oh.
Because you would get 3, right? And they would say, "Hey, do you want a week of in-school suspension or after-school suspension? Or do you want to take 3 licks?" I'd be like, "I'll take the 3 licks. Let's get this over with."
And you could handle it, so.
Oh, I don't know, man. Those parachute pants were thin.
Oh, well, in they call it disciplinarian in our school. Okay, they actually had a special title, not assistant principal. And I had like 1,000 kids in my class, so this guy was busy. And I had his paddle had holes in it.
Yep, so, this one did too.
Yeah, because you don't want the wind resistance, Yeah. And I think I got
and it gets a suction when it hits.
It does, and I got one. Of course, when I went home and shared that, I didn't share it. They did. I think the strap I got was worse than the paddle, but there were strap marks and there was little round holes on my butt that showed up. Too,
yeah, me and the other guy that averaged a lot together. we had to get licks at the same time.
Okay.
And he actually had engraved on the paddle the Bender.
Oh,
Bender.
oh,
That was the name,
okay.
the Bender, and it had the holes drilled in it.
Yeah.
And I took my 3 licks,
Yeah.
and then when my friend went after me, the paddle broke.
Oh, I saw that.
We broke
happen.
the school paddle.
That's bad.
Yeah.
When they break, it's bad.
I was like, I just want you to know I loosened it up for you because I took 3 licks before. You didn't even get a full 3.
You're the tough guy. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, listen. So this is maybe sort of BC, before Christ, right? It really hadn't taken hold.
Ebbed and flowed. Yeah. Ebbed and flowed.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the foundation was there, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
That really helped a lot. But yeah, I mean, have I strayed? Absolutely.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Have I gone on? I mean, look, I was Christian school for 7 years, and in high school, I started looking at Satan worship.
Yeah. So obviously, so for those of you folks out there who find yourself in really pretty strange situations, not uncommon. Here's the good news: He's waiting. He's never leaves you. You just need to plug back into the vine, right? So
it was there the whole time. Like I said, man, I found out later, like my grandmother's strong prayer line, she was praying for me. She knew something was up.
Sure she did.
My mom knew something was up.
Well, and we're going to talk about that because covering is everything. And I know your wife, Kara, was the best of all coverers. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but so let's fast forward a little bit because you had to make a decision, like career-wise. Like where are you headed? Like what drove you into sort of the law enforcement category? Help get us there a little bit.
So when I went to college, I really just went to have 4 more years to figure out what I was going to do because I didn't know. I applied at Lander University in South Carolina, and they turned me down because my first 2 years of high school, my grades weren't that great. Okay. I tried to argue back and say, or my rebuttal was, but that should show you that my grades were really good my last 2 years of high school, which should show you that I've matured. And I would be, but it's okay.
You got serious logic going. I'll tell you what, man.
Yeah, well, but it's okay. And I didn't get it, and I was done. I didn't know. And then a total divine intervention thing. Some of my buddies from high school had gotten accepted at Baptist College at Charleston, which became Charleston Southern University. And I didn't even know they had a football team. One day I get a call from the coach that says, "Hey, man, I heard you're a good lineman." And I said, "From who?" Not from my coach, I don't think. You know,
the guys that you hit across the line.
Yeah, maybe my lineman coach, but not the head coach.
Yeah,
right. So I ended up going to Charleston Southern, and I took. I was taking electives. Yeah. Psychology was always the constant. Okay. But I ended up coming out once I took a criminal justice course. It fascinated me, the whole criminology, forensics, just not so much like business law and tort law and all that stuff. That was like to me. Yeah. But yeah, the whole law enforcement side really piqued my interest. And then in college, I was already bouncing.
Oh, you were.
And then, and I was once I left the seedy establishments and got to like a legit country club, country bar. We had cops working I was about to say Knox County, Charleston County worked the door.
Okay.
So I started meeting a lot more North Charleston Police Department cops, and I was just trying to be a sponge, soak it up. And I remember when I first went on a ride along with a cop, that was it. Now, I will say, coming out of college, I had an opportunity, not that any of them would have panned out, but I had 4 tracks I was looking at. Musician, singer, because the band I was in had been signed under contract for the studio, not like a contract with a production company, but or music company, I should say. But had music. I had some scout combine letters to go try out. For like a couple of NFL teams, but it was like more World League, Canadian Football League, stuff like that. And then I had professional wrestling, which I'd been recruited by a couple of places. And then I had my degree, but I was a realist. I'm like, look, there was back then I graduated college in 93. So there was no WCW power plant. There was no WWE performance center.
Right.
It was, you worked the circuit, you tried to make a name for yourself, and that's what a lot of people did.
It's grind.
But being a realist, I was like,
Yeah.
look, I'm just going to go into
Sure.
law enforcement, and that's what I shot for, and that's what I got. I applied with 4 different departments, and then I got picked up by Greenville County Sheriff's Office in South Carolina.
Oh, awesome. So that, and you started right out of school, like it was pretty quick.
Yeah, a year,
Okay.
a year after. Yeah, towards the end of '93, I got hired. But yeah, I went to the academy and then came back. I was uniform patrol for 3 years, and then the last 2 years at the sheriff's office, I was a vice narcotics investigator.
All right. So now you're in law enforcement. You're with the sheriff's or police department. You said sheriff's office. How does the FBI come into the play here? Because that's a pretty big leap, isn't it?
Yes and no. Okay. I don't know. I mean, the FBI back then, there were 4 ways to come in. You could be an accountant certified, a lawyer certified, foreign language, or diversified. Okay. And diversified is a 4-year degree with 3 years of experience in a profession, but clearly law enforcement would help.
Yeah.
I think.
Sure.
But I applied. I was with a sergeant, Sergeant Kellett. We were on Southern Command Narcotics and Vice Narcotics, and we were on a surveillance. And I was in the car with him, and my nickname at that point was Kingpin. And he's like, Kingpin, if I was a young man like you and I had a 4-year degree and I was single, he said, I'd apply with the FBI. And I'd request New York as my first office. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? I was like, because at that point in time, I saw the FBI at bank robberies. I didn't know what else they did. I didn't know they worked drugs and all that stuff. And he started schooling me on it and said it was the hardest to get hired by over like other federal agencies. So I applied with the FBI first, and I never got a chance to fill out another application process. And he must have had some kind of crystal ball, because out of 56 field offices, you list them in order of what you want, which is insane, because I'm just like, just let me list my top 10. And if I don't get them, you're going to send me where you're going to send me.
Alaska.
Instead of having me sweat over it every night for weeks. Yeah. But I had like New York City, like number 36, I think, out of 56 offices. And I got it.
No way. Holy cow.
So when I went back for my going away party, I'm like, you jinxed me. I'm like, I got New York City, man. But it was great. It was awesome.
Good. Man, what was your first assignment? What happened?
Well, when you get to New York, that is the biggest field office the FBI has. So they put you through a rotation.
Okay.
Just to learn the city, just to learn the ins and outs of traffic. Oh. I mean, when you show up, they don't say, hey, with this placard, you can get through the bus lane in the Lincoln Tunnel and stuff like that. I mean, I live 10 miles from the office, door to door, and I would come in after rush hour or before rush hour, and it still took me an hour and a half.
Man.
And then you don't know any way to get home. So sometimes as a new agent assigned to New York, you're getting home at 8, 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. You're still trying to go grab a workout. But it's a rotation. I think I did like 3 or 4 months on an applicant. They have 2 squads. There's the applicant squad, and then there's the squad that does background investigations and presidential appointees. Okay. So you're doing that, but while you're doing that, if you're smart, you're walking over to the branches, mine being the drug branch, and selling yourself. Like, hey, if you guys need any help on an arrest, and they would say, yeah, we're going to do one this week. Come on over. I'd be the first one there, last one to leave. It was crappy assignments. You can't come in there with an ego going, I was an investigator. And I didn't know. I'm like, hey, I'm right here. I'll stand in the back and fingerprint whatever you need. And then by the time I came off of that rotation, you do the applicant squads, then you would do the operations center for like a week or 2. And then you would do a surveillance squad for a couple of months or more. And then I came off and I landed the Colombian drug squad, which was a great squad on the drug branch. I mean, in my opinion, probably the best one.
The best.
Yeah. And I mean, because of the work I'd done with the drug branch, I got my orders to come off the rotation, and I was going to foreign counterintelligence. And at that point, I was really literally thinking, I'm going to quit. I'm like, there ain't no way. It's going to be like watching paint dry for me. And the guy who had been my supervisor during the rotation went in there and argued for me. He said, look, he goes, I don't argue for everybody, and I rarely do. He said, but this guy should be working drugs. Wow. And when they reached out to the head of that drug branch, he remembered me from working. So I got a phone call. They told me I was going to the high intensity drug trafficking area, but that's a squad. It's a separate funding thing. That's what I heard I was getting. And then I got a phone call from the supervisor of the Colombian drug squad, who I'd helped a lot. And he said, hey, I just want you to know, it's my understanding that you're coming to the drug branch, but they told me you're going to HIDA. He goes, I know you've worked with our squad. You said you like it. A lot of the people here on the squad like you. And I'm in real good with the SAC and the ASAC and all this stuff. And he goes, so if you'd rather come to, he goes, I didn't know if you wanted HIDA. He goes, but if you'd rather come to the Colombian drug squad, I can make it happen. Like, I'm not an idiot. No. You got a supervisor of a squad calling you and offering that. Yeah. I'm like, yes, sir. I would love to come to the Colombian drug squad. So that was it.
So you must have encountered some pretty nefarious individuals during that.
Yeah, I mean, it was very. For me, it wasn't that shocking because, I mean, the people I was working against in South Carolina were very similar to the people I was working against.
Sure.
It's just more, and they stacked the buildings higher.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
In New York, but yeah, I mean, it was great, and I was a cop, so I loved the task force. I loved all the NYPD detectives, and because I was single, I would stay out late. I didn't have it, I'm like, as long as somebody lets my dog out, I'm good. I'll be out here with you all night long.
You did have a dog, and that's good.
Yeah, and that was it. And then, so you get in there and you're working all kinds of stuff, Colombian drug squad wise. But I'm so new.
Yeah,
I kind of just do, like, you do certain things for the case. Somebody else is running it. We're out there doing surveillance. But as far as taking my own case and building it from beginning to end, to take down and prosecution, everything, I didn't really master that until I got down to the border of Mexico.
Okay, so take us there. Tell us because then you're going to then soon transition into undercover work, which wasn't initially like undercover wasn't a thing, right? For the longest time.
In the FBI, up until 1972.
It was. Okay, that's what I thought.
Hoover did not believe in undercover. I mean, I would have never got hired by Hoover. I had earrings and tattoos when I came in. But in 1972, pretty much right after Hoover left, the FBI said, we're working undercover. And there's a pretty famous photo within the Bureau of the first 25 undercovers. It's a black and white photo that were picked, and Joe Pistone, Donnie Brasco's in that picture. So
you're the hillbilly Donnie Brasco. Yeah,
I did not pick that title. And listen, probably in the last 2 or 3 months, because he texted me. He texted me.
That's funny.
He did a blurb on the book. Yeah. He's helped me a lot through this process with his knowledge and everything. And he texted me and he goes, how did you land Joe Rogan? And I'm like, that's divine intervention, buddy. I'm like, I don't know how I did. But, and I said, and hey, by the way, when you hear them call me Hillbilly Donnie Brasco, I just want you to know I never, ever used your title. I've never, nor would I. I said, but they're calling me that. And I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do you proud. And he sent me the emoji with like the sunglasses, cool.
Well,
and he said, I like it. And I'm like, oh, well, if you like it,
then that's fine. Because if anybody's, knows the mob at all, they'll know what impact his undercover time had. And the Rogan interview, which I laughed about because I watched it, it's pretty hard to bring him to speechlessness, but I think there were that was your interview. It's like he was like,
he didn't hardly. Yeah, that's a lot of the feedback. If you read like the comments, there were so many that were like, man, he hardly spoke. And it wasn't because he was, because I was looking at him. I mean, I was engaging.
I know.
And he was engaged. You can hear him go like, whoa.
Oh, sure. Look, this, there's not many of us, and again, me included, and him, and he's a pretty worldly guy. Like he's been out there, like that level of evil that we're going to hear about a little here. is just beyond like what most folks would even imagine exists. And here you are, trying to,
In it.
yeah, in it. And then trying to balance the Jesus in you, right?
Sometimes not very good.
Well,
Yeah.
but hey, come on, like that's everyday life for everybody. If we're just honest, like we live in a world that just echoes evil. How in the world are we not impacted by it? But you did a pretty good.
Anybody who says they're not
Oh,
broken.
thank you.
Yeah, if you walk into a church and even the pastor doesn't say they're broken, and this is it.
Amen. Thanks for the cue in on Embracing Brokenness podcast here. But yeah, I mean, it is what we talk about here, because if we don't understand the level of, I don't know what's the right word, malevolence. Well, I don't even know, and I don't have words for some of the stuff that you're going to describe. But until we see it in ourselves, and you see this image behind me, that's like Jesus embracing and just holding on to the broken pieces in our life. Like he's the one that holds it together. It's crazy. So
I agree.
Yeah. So sorry. So you're headed to McAllen, right? Is that where you end up?
Yeah. I get down to McAllen. I actually did an undercover to get out of there. It was a classified case.
Oh, we can't talk about it. Oh.
No. I mean, it was, I was basically a security guard.
Oh, all right.
Which was not easy. I worked third shift straight for a year as a security guard. But I wanted to get in the undercover program, and I wanted to get transferred eventually out of New York and hopefully make it back to the Southeast at some point. And I did that case, and usually when they classify something, it's classified for like 25 years, and that was 2001. So we're close. Right. I don't know if they'll declassify it or not, but I don't want to get called back and put on the.
It might be the runner up to this,
Put on the stand. But it's a specialty undercover transfer because you're there full time. They just write it you in when they re-up the undercover operation. They write you in for a transfer.
Gotcha.
A cost transfer. Gotcha. So that's what happened. And we went down to McAllen. By that time I was engaged. And got to McAllen and was a case agent working drugs. And then most of the time it was all cartel stuff, but the thing I worked the most during that 6.5 year period was special interest alien smuggling, because it was a new flavor kind of coming in, and it was like, look, we're not so much concerned as the FBI with immigration, even though we could charge it if we want to. So the special interest alien smuggling, what you're looking for isn't necessarily illegal immigrants coming to the United States. It was illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants coming from threat countries. Yeah. So you might work an organization and we might follow 8 loads of undocumented aliens, but they're, other than Mexicans, they call them OTMs, other than Mexican. And then in that 9th or 10th load, you might get 10 from China or 2 from Yemen or something like that. And that's where we're working, but it's still the same cartel. Same rules as drugs. You still have to pay a quota. If you're going to smuggle through their territory, you have to pay a quota. If you don't pay the quota every 2 weeks, they kidnap you, beat the living, they torture you. Wow. Sometimes they kill you. But yeah, so that's what I was working. And once I got down there, now I'm a case agent. I'm learning. I'm building myself as a case agent. I'm putting things for prosecution. By about the 3rd case, I'm like, okay, now these are getting more airtight. And I was getting better at that. And then I got a chance to go to somewhere in there, I got a chance to go to the undercover school for the FBI, and I got certified.
Fantastic.
I ended up going to the Joint Terrorism Task Force for a little bit in McAllen because it was brand new.
I got you.
And being transparent as I always am. At that point in time, the way things were down in that office, I didn't care what I was working. I cared more about who I was working for.
That makes sense.
Because there was some pretty miserable environments there. But it all changed. Nothing stays the same forever, good or bad. And then, through attrition, you get people transferring out, and then all of a sudden you're the senior guy on the squad. You don't know how it happened. It's not like you've been there that long, but everybody else has left. So that extortion, robbery, kidnapping comes in, and you're like, I'm the only one on the squad that's done this before. I'm like, well, okay, then now you're training people. But that's when I was there. That's when I landed an Undercover in Oklahoma. I did some other cameo stuff. I'd done that one full time in Texas that got me transferred. But that's when I landed the Outlaws case.
All right, so you brought up the Outlaws. Maybe this is a good time for you to share with our audience early on just what that first challenge looked like for you.
Well, I mean, some people may not know it, but like a lot of we call them criminal enterprise cases. That is an all-encompassing. That can be gangs. That can be the cartel. Right. I mean, you can break them down into different sub-desks at headquarters, but essentially, it's a bigger case.
Okay.
You're working an organization or an enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
So the case team had already been working and building this case. Actually, the task force officers had been building it from the state and local level like crazy. I guess they got partnered up with the FBI in Boston, Massachusetts, and they wanted to start an undercover. I don't know how many undercovers they interviewed for the gig, but I flew in and met the case team and then everybody. Because when you first go, it's like so passionate. I mean, the room's full of the undercover coordinator, the case team, the supervisors, ATF was there, DEA was on the case team, all the state and local agencies, and I was getting grilled by like, how many biker gangs have you infiltrated and stuff like that? And I'm like, none.
Right.
I'm like, but I think that's a plus, because if I've been infiltrating a bunch of them, then I'm going to be known. Right. If I've gone deep undercover.
But I do ride a Harley in case you need it.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm a biker, and even when I bounced, the Hells Angels were in some of those clubs all the time, and they actually helped me in a lot of fights. So I need, again, that proverbial fork in the road. I could have went.
Yep. Well, we're glad you went this way.
Yeah. That skill set ended up helping me, though.
Yeah, sure it did.
I would make it a joke because I'm like, I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, so you got Bob Jones University, and it was always pretty strict. I don't know what it is now, but it was like, women, I think maybe you might be able to see an ankle, and that was too much. It was very, very legalistic, very rule oriented. But I would joke, and I'm like, you can't take somebody that's straight laced from Bob Jones and have them infiltrate a 1%er biker gang. You can't, be in a satanic concert festival or whatever. So those, that stuff, I was blessed with those skills. I get picked for the case. And again, in the book, so in depth. And but just so your listeners will kind of get the gist of it, because we're going more faith-based.
Absolutely.
This is I knew like how I wanted to kind of bump them. Like when I say that because that's the term we use, but like how I'm going to engage you, how I'm going to meet you. They frequented a gentleman's club, which I even say it in the book. That's an oxymoron, because
certainly
I've been in many of those places. No. And there's not a single gentleman in there. And that includes me when I used to work at those places.
Oh, gosh.
But that skill set helped me later on in life, right?
Sure.
So now I can walk into a strip club and I'm not going to fall in love. I'm not going to fall in lust. I know. And I'm like, all right, well, that makes me better, I think, being the undercover in that room.
Well, there's still a Holy Spirit at work in you. I mean, it's your job. You got to relinquish that. So,
yeah. And those are some of the things I get asked by a lot of Christ followers.
Oh, I bet.
Heavy in their faith. They're like, man, how could you do that knowing that you're a Christ follower? And I'm not a smart man. That's what I usually say.
I think you're pretty smart, man. You evaded,
that's what I usually say.
You evaded death on many occasions.
I may not be smart, but I know what love is.
Yeah. And you know how to stay on the right track.
But so I get into the case, and now we're frequenting strip clubs that they go to, and that's how I kind of bumped them in the bar, just being me. I mean, with this accent in Boston, Massachusetts, come on. As soon as I say, give me 2 Jack and Cokes, they're like, where are you from? Or they go, well, they're cursing, like, where the F are you from?
Well, I'm pretty sure by the end of this, I'm going to have a twang to my voice. So go ahead.
Now you're like, I'm mirror. I can't help it.
I know.
I talk to people from Massachusetts, and I'll start sounding just like them. If I talk to somebody that stutters, I'll start stuttering.
All right, tell me about it.
And they're like, are you making fun of me? And I'm like, no, man, I can't help it. I mirror. I don't even know why.
It's
like,
because you did it for so many years.
but it's ingrained.
Yeah.
That skill set was in me before I ever worked undercover.
Yeah.
That's just my personality
Sure.
and what the Lord blessed me with.
Yeah,
you know?
That's right.
Or cursed me with, however you want to look at it.
You got a great memory too, by the way. That's another blessing.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes, that's our business, man. It's articulation.
I know.
And like, if you can't articulate a story back, like let's just say I had friends who may want to accuse you of stuff, and you're like, bro, we've had the conversation. We've probably had like 50 conversations about this in the last 5 to 10 years.
Right.
And it gets to the point to where you're like, I'm actually kind of worried, because if you can't remember those conversations we had that were in depth and multiple, how could you testify against somebody? What are you forgetting on the stand?
Exactly.
That is our job.
Yeah.
And that's why we write the reports we write,
every
because
day.
May be 5 years later. It may be 5 years later, and I'm like, oh man, I kind of remember, but let me read my report. And you're like, oh yeah, I got it now.
Got to do it.
But so anyway, I go in the Outlaws, I'm hanging out, I'm getting noticed, and then I start getting invited to parties and get-togethers, and I had a backstory that I was a site survey specialist for investors out of Dallas.
Okay.
And I traveled over the country looking at properties to possibly purchase and build on. And then as they're doing their criminal activity, it starts coming out that I'm a criminal too. And what they ended up believing is that I was a high-ranking member of an international theft ring. So they were reporting vehicles stolen, getting the insurance money. I would buy the vehicles from them at a stolen price.
Right.
But I was doing things that were legit. Like when I moved to the border, I found out my Harley Davidson insurance, my motorcycle insurance, more than tripled from New Jersey. I'm talking about Jersey, right on the river next to the 5 boroughs.
Yeah.
When I went to Texas, it almost tripled. And I called USAA and I'm like, what in the world is up with this bill? And they're like, yeah, so you're near the border and Harley Davidsons and 4x4 V8s get stolen all the time. Wow. That's the number one draw. So then I start talking to Texas Department of Public Safety, Texas DBS, and I talked to their auto theft units, and they're telling me, and then I'm talking to like weapons guys, and they're like, yeah, it's very common for weapons to come in and get traded for and I'm learning all this stuff, and then I'm just regurgitating it.
Sure.
So as I gain trust, because that's kind of starting to like, I mean, if you're somebody that's shot somebody and you do home invasions, insurance fraud, they're like, nah. And then it becomes, they called me Tex, and then
right,
not
Tex.
Very original.
Yeah,
because I was out of Texas. I'm like,
of course.
Okay. I mean, you don't pick your nicknames, right?
No. Well, eventually you did. Codename, anyway.
Actually,
right.
Yeah, you're right. I did it, but I asked.
You did
ask for pale horse. I got permission. Yeah.
Yep.
But then it was like, hey, Tex, we just carjacked this guy. I mean, we took this car at gunpoint. We almost killed him. He owes us money. We got to get rid of this thing. It is hot. Jeez. And I would load it up on my truck driver's semis. But then as the time went on, we get to, now we're going to do a dope deal. Now I've already bought dope, and now we're getting information. The case team is working nonstop, just like me, and then some, because they're running Title III wiretaps, and I'm not. I may be there every third week. I might be up there, but I'm still calling from home, and it was just, you go where the case takes you. And what I learned through the rest of my career, 23 years at the FBI, is I thought, in 2007, 2008, when we took that thing down, I thought, man, that's a 2-year case in a violent biker gang that was doing some violent stuff. At least that chapter was. Sure. And I thought, man, I'm probably going to do three or more of these before I retire. Yeah. It never happened. I mean, I've been a part of starting something, or nothing ever came to fruition, or you're getting into the case, you go to a meet, and then a source messes up, or management comes in and says, we're not doing this, or somebody gets hurt and management says, we're not, headquarters comes in and says, you're done. Wow. We're not risking anybody's life, kind of thing. And it just never happens. And then I really realized what a kind of an anomaly to be around that kind of violence for 2 years and not have to shut it down because of something, so, but we ended up, I think the big thing everybody wants to talk about and remembers is, after a year and a half undercover, with the Outlaws and doing all those criminal activities. We upped the ante because they've been asking for dope and dope from day one. And I let it be known that I did have contacts, because I did have cartel contacts, because I was moving all the stolen stuff there. But I let it be known. Yeah, hypothetically. It was really going to a warehouse somewhere in Massachusetts.
Right. If they
I'm
ever
going all
found
the
a
way to
warehouse,
Mexico.
if they ever went there, like, wait.
Yeah.
Wait.
Well, it's like my motorcycle. Wait a minute. Is that F-350 we stole off the lot? But I let it be known that I was involved with drugs, and we did a whole kind of ruse that took forever to lay out, and we eventually, at 1.5 years, were going to do a drug deal. And the United States Attorney's Office wanted as much evidence as they could get, and that was my job as an undercover, to get the evidence. And I went into the clubhouse the night before the deal, and I was wired to the hilt. And that's when they took me down into the crawl space basement. It wasn't big, in the clubhouse, and stripped me at gunpoint to looking for a wire. And they almost found it. I was pretty wired.
Oof.
So,
in many ways wired, I'm sure, man.
Yeah, it wasn't a good night.
Had your team ready to infiltrate, right? To pull you.
Well, yeah, yes and no.
Okay.
Because so if you hear the audio or see the video, when they bring me down there, man, you can see I'm having a panic moment. I'm having an oh crap moment.
Oh yeah.
And it's the same. Everybody's body goes through the same thing. Adrenaline dump.
Oh yeah.
You get auditory exclusion. Everything sounds like you're underwater. It slows down. Everything slows down. You're like whoosh.
Wow.
Whoosh. So if I hear you, you're going, Scott.
Wow.
Right down because you're like, oh my goodness. And then your eyes, you get time dilation. Everything's in like screenshots. It's like click, click. You can feel your heart beating through your whole body. My hamstrings get rubbery. But you can clearly hear my voice is higher than this because of panic. My throat's tightening up. My diction gets pretty sloppy because I'm like, should I ask what's going on? Because I'm freaking out. Because I know I'm wired. I know that they've got pistols. They've already shown me that. I know I've seen rope. I know I'm not free to leave. I know even if I battled those guys, didn't get shot, and let's just say I made it past those two dudes. Right. Once I go up the steps, it's the clubhouse. They just finished what they call church, which is their weekly meeting.
Yes. And
it's probably another 10 outlaws in there. Jeez. And the door's heavily fortified. It's locked with a steel bar across the door.
Wow.
So, I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, and I remember because of the panicking, I forgot my middle name. He told me to write down my full name. And just because of the stress, I forgot my middle name, which was crazy because I'd been that's me. I mean, I made it.
Yeah.
I was Scott Andrew Calloway. I made that identity, and I've been that identity for many years. But because of the stress, I forgot it. And then I eventually remember it. And I'm talking because that's what I was trained. I was like, hey, just don't vapor lock. Keep trying to find something. Keep talking. And you know, at one point, the guy taking me down there and stripping me, the enforcer, was like the second closest relationship I had in that 1.5 years.
Oh my gosh!
So he was technically my boy, my friend. You know. And he was telling me, you know, he's like, if somebody accused me of being a Fed, I'd smash him in the effing mouth. And I'm like, well, I'm not happy. And then I think I'm done. And he searches me. I'm completely naked. Well, I'm naked from the ankles up. I take off all my clothes, my boots. I drop my pants and underwear down around my ankles. They check me. And then I'm I get my pants back up. I might have got my boots on. And that's when Clothesline says, he picks up a piece of clothing. And that piece of clothing actually had a recording device in it.
Oh my goodness.
And he says, hey, I'm not going to find anything in here like some naked pictures of my old lady. And he kind of laughs.
Jeez.
And I tried to laugh, but I know what's in there, you know? And my laugh is more like I hope not, right? And he starts kneading the jacket. He starts going, he's grabbing it, and he's kneading it with his fingers, and he's going up it. And I'm like, I'm watching it, and I go, I don't even know how to do it, but I'm watching it, and you hear me go, because I'm just standing there. Like, I'm not even standing up straight. I'm just sitting there watching, going, I don't know what I'm going to do. And and he kind of looks right at it and misses it.
Wow. I would call that a God intervention story.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things to lean into faith on. That is, people always ask me, what would you have said if they'd have found it? Well, the first thing, because I'm an idiot and I'm a jokester, is if he would have said, hey, what is this? My first response might have been, I don't know, some naked pictures of the old lady.
Oh my gosh.
Just to try to buy time.
Yeah, of course.
Because he already threw me that bone.
Yeah.
But the only other thing I had to say was, the gig's up. I'm an undercover FBI agent, and I can walk out of here and we can see each other in court, or all HE double sticks is gonna break loose. But that would have been a bluff on my part, because as far as I knew, every time I'd been in that clubhouse, the team could never really hear me, whether it was the walls or whatever. They could never hear me.
I got you.
So it would have been a bluff.
Wow.
So I thought.
Yeah.
So that night when I go and meet the team to pass off my devices, it might have been 4 a.m. Who knows? And I find out that the 2 task force officers that were working the case, they started the shift that night with me. Something in the initial interactions with me and the president made their spidey senses go off. And they had pulled close enough. They could hear everything. They were listening. They had radioed back to Boston, because technically it was the beginning of our shift, right?
Right.
And they radioed back that I was in the basement getting stripped at gunpoint. And I was, of course, everybody knew I was wired. So to my understanding, everybody from the Boston office that was still there, that squad anyway, was hauling butt down the highway with blue lights and sirens trying to get to me. But I passed. And then that's when, here's the God thing for me. At that point in time in my marriage, I'd bought my wife it was commonly called a burner phone now. You buy it at Walmart, put minutes on it, it doesn't come back to anything. And that's what I did. So I could call her from my undercover phone. And that way, nobody else ever called it. That phone was only just to stay in contact with me. And I called her every night, no matter if it was 4 a.m. or 7 a.m. I'd call her and say, hey, babe, just letting you know I'm done. I'm going to the hotel room. I'll call you when I wake up this afternoon. That night when I called her, she immediately said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, why? She said, because of such and such time, I was driving with our girls in the car in McAllen, and she got this overwhelming feeling of just fear for me, and pulled over on the side of the road and started praying for me. And I mashed it up. It's when I was in the basement. It's when I was getting stripped. Yeah. And then I later found out, I forgot, my mom reminded me of this one. My mom had a very similar feeling and just prayed to the Holy Spirit over me, you know? So
that's I got a little chill there, because I can only imagine the stress on your wife through all this. I assume you aren't able to share a lot of the details with her, right? Of cases, or were you able to?
Yeah, my household was more open than that.
Okay.
To the point that where probably some FBI personnel would probably be mad and say
oversharing,
bad operational security.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't classified,
I
mean, it's like, she knew I was in a biker undercover. I mean, she knew I was with the Outlaws. So I don't think my household, my marriage, my family, my family cell would not work with me coming home and going, hey, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
I don't think it would.
Well, I'm not sure many would. Like, to an extent, like I can't, there's a lot of guys out there right now trying to imagine themselves in your situation, in that situation, what they would have done. But even in the situation of how do I even navigate family life, through this process, because, you're going home, obviously exhausted at times, trying to, stay connected to your bride and to your 2 young girls, right, at the time.
Right.
Maybe not as young now as they were then, but probably have some recollection as to the fact that Dad would have to head out every once in a while and come back and go, what was happening, Daddy out there? And then, go to church. We talked about this, I think, off camera, go into a worship service and playing, I think, guitar, right. And singing and, having to have the camera stay below your head so that in case somebody might recognize you on a broadcast, right? Oh my gosh.
That was the Tennessee. When I moved to Tennessee from the border, I'd let my job interfere with me worshiping before we came to Tennessee. And I'd crashed mentally and physically because for over a 3-year period, I did way too much. For me, I found my threshold. I think your threshold changes daily.
Sure.
Sometimes you take off for a jog and you're like, man, I'm going to kill it. Sometimes you take off and you look down thinking, how long have I been running? And it's like 2 minutes and you're like, oh, this is going to be a long day.
Yeah.
So I think it changes, but for a 3-year period, I stopped taking care of myself. I took the warrior mentality, rubbed some dirt on it, put a Band-Aid on it and go. And I applied it to every aspect of my life, and it ended up being detrimental for me.
Wow.
So once I got to Tennessee, I had to come up with a game plan of how not to let that happen again.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was scared and after crashing, they came in and assessed me and they said, we're diagnosing you as overassigned. You need to take a break and take care of yourself. And then my mentors and peers like Joe Pistone reached out to me, and my nickname was Big Country.
Okay.
And they're like, hey, Country, are you okay? And I said, well, thanks for checking in, boss man. But I'm like, yeah, I'm doing a little bit better. And they're like, man, take care of yourself, take care of your family. But as soon as you can, put pen to paper about everything you've learned through this process, because that's how we train the next generations to not make mistakes. That's how we get our best blocks of instruction. And they were right. And that's what I did. And, but I remember being beat down and scared because I even kept a journal. They told me to keep a journal. So I'm transparent. Like I told you, I'm like writing everything. Cause I'm like, I want to know am I having a nervous breakdown? And I just remember thinking, how am I going to get back? In my mind, I'm thinking, how am I going to get back to being me and remain humble to God? Because when you get smacked down, that's usually when everybody comes back, right? You're like, and in my jovial conversation, I pictured me going to the Lord and going, Lord, I'm here. I need you. It's Scott. And I pictured the Lord going, who? And I'm like, Scott, you
remember me?
Come on, Big Country.
Big Country.
And it's like the last time you came here was, and I'm like, well, last time something bad happened. And then when everything got good, I kind of, and that would happen in life.
Sure.
And so I had to change my ways on that. And I just remember thinking, man, how can I get back to being this self-confident, whatever, type A, whatever. I'm not going to say I'm better than anybody because I'm not, right? But I remember praying about it. And one day it just hit me like a brick in the face. And the message I received was, son, you would have never been able to do what you did if it wasn't for me blessing you in the first place.
Wow.
And when I got that, I was like, aha.
Wow.
I know I could probably even be better.
Wow.
And I can remain humble to God. Wow. And that's how, so when I got to Tennessee, back to the music stuff and the worshiping, I had let my job interfere. Like I was in the border, I went to Baptist Temple, and I'd go jam with them and they were like, man, but then I'd be gone. And I let my job interfere. So when I got to Tennessee, I said, I'm not going to let it interfere. And I landed in Undercover after being here about 6 months. I ended up going full-time deep undercover because nobody knew me here for a year and a half. But I joined a church and I was on the band and I was singing and I was I say it in the book, but I was the headless guitar man for a year and a half because I was like, I'm not going to stop. And I'm sure anybody in the FBI or the undercover program would be, that is terrible operational security. And I'm like, look, man, it is what it is.
Well, I assume you wore long sleeve shirts too.
Yeah and no. I mean, I
didn't think about that, did you?
Well, no, but then I didn't have the full sleeve over here.
Oh, gotcha.
I probably just had about the right there.
I gotcha.
But yeah, short sleeve shirt, you probably couldn't see it that much.
Yeah.
But,
man.
Yeah. So, but I didn't let it interfere. And it was funny because I played this past weekend. I played 3 services. And and it was a camera guy I hadn't seen in forever.
Yeah,
and he remembers me from the first time.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Because I was there for about 5.5 years, and then we switched churches for 6.5, and then we came back.
Okay.
And he comes up and he goes, hey, is it okay to show your
Oh,
face?
that's
I said,
funny.
buddy. I said,
Dude,
buddy,
your face is everywhere.
yeah, I'm like, there's no more undercover
No.
for me, buddy. I'm like, you can blast it. I'm like, I'm out there, you know. But yeah, it's pretty good.
Scott,
Pretty
I
good
love
stuff.
that. I love that story because it just brings it to bear, like just how critically important our relationship with God is, no matter what our career choices are.
Yeah.
And yours is like hyper level.
Well, but it kept me grounded.
Yeah.
Like, you know, yeah. So I mentioned the proverbial fork in the road. I could have went the wrong way.
Yeah.
I mean, there's targets that I am really good friends with.
Yeah.
I put them in prison, and I'm good friends with them, and I love them,
Yeah.
and they love me.
Crazy.
And you know, it's just it's kept me grounded because a lot of times, whether I was in a satanic concert festival or some kind of ritual, doing crazy stuff, or even the Outlaws and whatever, that when we were in McAllen, that's when we started finding out. They called them life groups there, but it's a small group.
Yeah.
And that's when, I mean, I maybe I couldn't tell them everything,
Sure,
but I could tell them I'm struggling.
Yeah.
And I'm having some issues. And then they put you in that chair in the middle of the room and they lay your hands on you and pray for you. And I can't tell you how much that has helped me. I mean, the number 2 pastor at Baptist Temple was Danny.
Okay.
And Danny, he's still in Texas, but I remember him and his wife, we hosted it, they led it. And then, you know, we got up here to Tennessee, same thing, man, small groups. And I'm still in one today.
That's
I mean,
great.
I was there Sunday night.
Oh, fantastic. And I know they were praying for you, even though they didn't know what was going on while you were out there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's encouraging because, you know, here's the thought I have: how critical community is. You know, you're hanging out in community, not the one that you would normally choose to live with, and it's dangerous, and there's all kind of stuff going on. But to know that you have people back on the real front lines of it's been the spiritual warfare realm, really fighting on your behalf to try to get. Because listen, it's what you do, what you did, and even what you're doing now, quite frankly, is such an encouragement to everyone that I've talked to. And I've shared, you know, your story a little bit with folks that weren't familiar. And it can be mesmerizing, but at the same, because again, we talk about the train wreck, right? We love to look under the rock and keep looking. It's like, tell me more. I want to, how did this end?
When you watch a fight, do you want it to go to decision or you want to see somebody get knocked out?
You want to see somebody knocked out. Like
it's human nature.
Yeah.
It's human nature. I'm like, man.
Of course we do. Come on. But yet, but at the same time, the better story is the redemption story, where somebody gets knocked out, but maybe they get back up again and they see that life in a different light, right? I mean,
that's a good topic, man. I love success stories. Me and some of my peers, and again, I just mentioned that some of the targets I put in prison, I'm good friends with. I love them, you know. And for so many years of me arresting people, I'm like, for the most part of it, I said, especially as I got older and wiser, I mean, I'd sit down with them and I'd say, look, I mean, maybe not with a pedophile.
Well, sure,
that's different. But like for the most part, I sit them down and I said, look, man, I'm not saying male or female. I'm not saying I think you're a bad person. I'm not saying I disagree with what you did. What I'm saying is you're an adult. You made a choice to break the law and you got caught. Right. So that's where we are.
That's right.
And let me just tell you what I got on you. I said, there's no point in me BSing you right here. I'm like, you're under arrest. I'm here. Why would I lie to you now? I'm not undercover trying to buy dope from you. Right. I'm going to tell you exactly what I got on you. Yeah. And we're going to give you a chance to help yourself.
That is
but
so good.
There are people, there are ones, it's sad that it's very rare in 28 years in law enforcement, but there have been success stories. And there's nothing, well, it's one of the things that warms my heart the most to see somebody who's, okay, you made a mistake. You know how many crimes I committed?
No.
I just didn't get arrested.
Caught. Yeah.
Yeah. If I would have been arrested and charged, I wouldn't have been able to be an FBI agent for sure.
Sure.
Most likely not a cop either. And, but to see somebody who, let's say they were in a hate group and when things really started getting weird in that hate group, they were like, this isn't for me. And then they end up getting arrested when we take everything down because of something they did.
Right.
And I met them. I met them at a trial, and I met their father.
Wow.
And I talked to him and I said, listen, I said, I know it's weird. I said, but if you're doing the right thing, man, I'll do anything I can to help you. I ended up doing a character reference letter for their sentencing. I let the United States Attorney's Office know it.
Wow.
I let them read it. I didn't have to because I was retired, but that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I didn't want to blindside them, but I'm like, look, he's telling me he's doing the right thing. I'm going to do it. And they just got probation.
Wow.
And then you find out, they're like, hey, I'm really concerned because I know I messed up. Now I got a felony on my record.
Yeah.
But I'm going into this line of work. I'm going to school for it. I'm concerned about being able to find a job with a felony on my record. I said, well, buddy, if you're still doing the right thing, who better to put down as a character reference than the person who helped you get up the felony? You know, I said, put me down. Okay. If it wasn't for second, fourth, fifth, sixth, 20th chances, I wouldn't be sitting here doing what I'm doing. So,
okay. That's a redemption story. That's the best. And, you know, it's hard to pray for what we perceive as enemies, you know, but what better place than to live it out? Colleen and I don't think I shared this with you, but we do quite a bit in prison ministry. The two of us go and we're teaching here in the local prison, and we rotate blocks. So there's 800 guys locked up here in our county prison and jail, waiting to trial or waiting to transfer upstate or wherever they're at. And you know, we just take advantage of the opportunity to go in and share the gospel. We teach a kind of we crafted a course we call Identity Matters, and we really get back to Genesis 1, 2, 3, you know, in the beginning, and try to challenge everybody, like, who is God? Who are you? And you know, he you were created in his image. Like, you're here, but that doesn't define you. You know, your crimes don't define you.
Yeah,
like,
your past doesn't.
No,
and change.
And man, Scott, to be able to see what God does, it's not us. It's through the message through us, and watch that in the short time we even have with them, maybe over 8-10 weeks. And then we do some one-on-ones, and I follow guys out of here. I meet with them regularly. I'm doing one-on-ones. We're on regular calls every week. I mean, as much bandwidth as I can that God calls me to do. And I want to tell you, like, we had an opportunity, one guy the other day, to lead him to the Lord right in class. Like, come on. Does it get better than that? Right. No. I mean, somebody recognized.
Not as a believer, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. And for him, and the next couple of weeks, he's coming in, he's got a big smile on his face. He's like, I'm looking at a transformed guy that God just rescued from the worst possible place he could imagine. And this is no, cakewalk in this local jail, because it's about 100 years old, and you know, you've seen them, you know what they look like.
Oh yeah. So I've done plenty of interviews in those little cells.
I'm sure you have.
With no AC, and you're like, oh my God.
There's none. Like, it's 100 degrees in this little 7x9. You know, in the middle of the summer here, even in the winter, because the heat cranks up and it's still that cut. You know,
we've got God behind bars.
I'm familiar.
At my church, so that's
okay.
And even my daughters helped out there. So
I love that.
I'll go talk, but see, I play at Celebrate Recovery a lot.
Oh, so that's, very good, very good.
So I mean, I go there, and a lot of times people think I'm a recovered addict just because the way I look. You know, I don't say, I'm actually an undercover FBI agent. You know.
They're like, what? Give me a tomato,
Scott. They go, Scott, sometimes guys like us fall off the wagon. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yep, I know what you mean.
I sure do. So
that was when I was still active, though. Now I'm like, hey, but I know. I mean, I know the system. I know. I was just on the other side. You know. But
so great that you do that work, because that's really, again, that's the cherry on top of what you've done, to be able to go in there and just stand before people and witness to the fact that, hey, look, I'm just like you guys. You know, we're just in a different place in life. Watch change happen right before your very eyes. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. It's not everybody, I get that, but the few, it's an awesome thing. Okay, everyone. Well, that's part one of this 2-part series with Scott, and man, is this fascinating stuff, isn't it? So don't miss this, and please invite friends to watch this first part, and then come back the next time around and join us, and then share it again. Share it liberally. We'd love to have people come in, comment, like, share, review. This is what it's about, for us to get more people engaged in this content on our YouTube channel or Spotify or wherever you're getting this podcast. Thanks again for joining us. We will be back soon for part 2 of Scott Payne.
This was another episode of the Embracing Brokenness podcast. For more information on Embracing Brokenness Ministries, please visit our website at embracingbrokenness.org.